Thanks for joining us this afternoon, folks. I'm Trey Stewart, Senate Republican leader, joined with my House counterpart, Representative Falkingham. I'm going to turn it over to him in a second just for introductory remarks, but we are here today back kind of in a normal pattern with our weekly press updates. Tuesday afternoons, you can anticipate those. True to form, we're going to talk about a subject that's a priority for Republicans here under the dome, and then we'll be back at the end for a Q&A session, both on this subject and other unrelated things. We're a little short on time today, so we're going to have to be quick, but appreciate you all being here. Today's subject matter is substance use prevention and the need for doing more in Maine's public educational system. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Falkingham.
Thank you. We're here to talk about an important subject today. Often we hear talk and policies directed at things like murder and suicides, which are important issues, but those numbers really pale in comparison to the amount of drug overdose deaths we've had in recent years. And when you annually have numbers 600-700 people dying of drug overdose, it's time to start taking that issue seriously, and we need to start looking into recovery and resources directed at that, because it's a huge public health emergency. And we're going to kick off today with Senator Mary Ann Moore.
Thank you, Representative Falkingham. I appreciate that. Just 2 weeks ago, we were in this room talking about mental health. Today's topic of substance use disorder goes hand in hand with that. When we look at some of the statistical information, in 2022, we experienced 723 fatal overdoses, a 13% jump from 2021, which was 631. The numbers so far for 2023 show 607 fatal overdoses. That may change, but we've tracked closer to 2021 due to the proliferation of Narcan out in the field. 9,654 of those total overdoses versus the 10,488 in 2022 and 10,574 in 2021. But still, the fatal overdoses have increased, have risen 71% since 2017, and we suspect it's due to the fentanyl being out in the field. And according to several police departments, unfortunately, the true extent of the overdoses last year may not be, they're being underreported. You know, they're not reporting, they're taking care of it immediately. This is what happens, they've got the Narcan, they take care of the overdose. And it may not be reported, so the numbers may be lower than what we're looking at. And it's just like the COVID home test brought back down tracking results, the same thing is happening to our drug overdose. So substance abuse touches many, many, many of the problems that we see in today's society. We know that the root cause of some of the child's death, this legislature has been investigated in the Office of Child and Family Services through both my Health and Human Services Committee and the Government Oversight Committee, involved families struggling with drug abuse and trying to work through that. We've seen 2 cycles of reports from the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey that shows declining mental health among our youth. This is the most vulnerable demography when it comes to drug experimentation and turning to drugs to solve those mental health crises. We know that the governor brought up several of the crisis resource centers that she's proposing. She's proposed a hybrid one in Kennebec County. Hybrid may work in Kennebec County, but it won't work in counties such as Washington County. We're spread too thin with that. And so when we start looking at our pillars and we look at the important pillars, prevention and education are so important and are such an important key to reducing these overdoses and making sure that we help the mental health and the substance use disorders that our children are facing. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Barron, who's going to talk about a couple of his bills.
Thank you, Senator Moore. My name is Brad Farron. I live in Norwich Walk and have the honor of representing Senate District 3 in the Maine Senate. As many of you know, my daughter Haley was one of those 723 in 2022 that passed away from fentanyl overdose. And at that time, I kind of made a commitment to focus on what I call the three-legged stool, right? Enforcement, education, and then treatment and harm reduction. We had a bill last session to try to do on the enforcement piece. Unfortunately, it passed in the Senate and failed in the House and died between the parties. So we change the focus around a little bit, and I had a concept draft of LD 353, which is an act concerning substance use disorder treatment, recovery, prevention, and education, and teamed with the Maine Medical Association in their 1,000 Lives Matter campaign to try to take this head on. And so we took LD 353 and from a concept draft and turned it into a resolve where we can try to combine the best practices from clinicians, doctors, treatment places across the state, and grab that data so we can share best practices to save more lives, because we're losing too many Mainers every day. During the public hearing on that, we had overwhelming support from Hospital Association, Maine Medical Association, folks from the recovery community, harm reduction community, because everyone's trying, but we're not compiling the data to do it. The only opposition we heard, interesting enough, was from the governor's office. And that kind of bothers me on a lot of fronts after hearing at the State of the State address discussing this, but not specific plans in place to be able to gather this data with this resolve and help Mainers that are dying every day. So I'm hoping that 353 moves forward. There's a work session on it tomorrow. I encourage the Committee of Health and Human Services to really look deep into this bill and try to move things forward so we can have that study piece and share the data across the state. The other thing that we did this session was LD 2089, which it's got a long title. It's an act to require schools to provide instruction regarding prevention of illegal use of fentanyl and other drug and drug poisoning awareness in grades 6 through 12, and then to establish the Drug Poisoning Awareness Week for the 3rd week of October. Again, we have this tendency around this building to pass a law and go around and do circles and pat ourselves on the back, but we don't always do follow-up. There was a bill last session to provide Narcan training in our schools and getting that out to folks. I know that is being implemented now, but we got to make sure that we're tracking that and maybe making students and teachers and faculty aware of what's going on. After Haley passed, we reached out to 2 or 3 schools in our district, and superintendents didn't have that awareness. Now, people are more than willing to spread the word when we got it out there, but it's not happening. Go home, talk to your administrators, talk to your school board members, ask what's being taught in our schools, and I think you'll hear a deafening zero. And it's because we want to bury our heads in the sand and think that we won't be impacted. It won't touch our lives. And I'm telling you that it does. And if you haven't been touched by it, you will be. That's the sad state of affairs until we as policymakers get our heads wrapped around this and force some positive change. To that point, I'd like to introduce Representative Scott Searway. Scott has a long and storied history in enforcement and also education with the DARE program and some of those programs that we had as we grew up. And we can't go back because this is a new, what we faced in the 80s and 90s is nothing compared to what we're facing in the 2020s and beyond. But I think there's some lessons learned that we can learn from that. So Representative Searway.
Thank you. I'm Scott Searway and I represent District 63. I just wanted to touch a few bases on what's been changed through the years. We had DARE way back in 1983. Daryl Gates started, and it was instructional. And the times have changed through the years of what we've exposed to, what kids have grown up with on TV, on music, on games, all kinds of different things that they're exposed to, and so their risk is much higher than it was back when we were young. So there's instructional back when we first started in DARE. We would just tell the kids of what to do and what to look out for and whatever. But now times have changed to facilitation type techniques, where you use higher level learning questions. And you ask those questions and the kids answer, and you try to get them to think about how to deal with things on their own. And also you use group activities where they can work together to come up with the answers. Because when you go to work in the field, or when you get out in the field, you got to look at what your risks are, taking a chance and what can the consequence be, and also what surrounds you as far as trying to avoid or to be able to say no. There's all kinds of ways, and a lot of peer pressures out there. So what we're trying to do is we've done a lot of research. The DARE program has gone kind of cooperated with Keeping It Real from Pennsylvania, and they have actually done a study on April 28th of 2023 with the Health of National Library of Medicines. They actually came out with very positive results on how they are helping kids. And believe it or not, kids is our future. I know we don't talk about it much, but our kids are the ones that have to make those wise decisions through life. And if you don't start young, you're gonna get bad habits, and it just continues and gets worse. So as far as the DARE program goes, I was on the opioid task force. We tried to get a group together to do a training and get several DARE officers out in the field, but it went to needle exchange, $1.6 million, and several other avenues, which was treatment, but no prevention and no law enforcement for keeping stronger laws. So you can fight, you can come up with treatment, but if you don't fight the war, you're not going to win. And I think that that's the basis here. If we don't start smartening up for the whole state, we are going to end up with a lot of people dying. So thank you for your time. I think it's very important we start doing some good prevention. Thank you.
Thanks for that. So we'll take some questions. If anybody has any questions about this subject matter first, we'll start with that, and then we've got a couple minutes here we can devote to other things as well.
Senator Farron, as someone that was directly impacted by this topic, how do you think these proposed legislations maybe would have made an impact in your situation?
Wow, that's a tough one. I don't know, because I'll tell you, as a parent, I think we had our heads buried in the sand and didn't think it affected us. I mean, Haley worked the day before she passed. She's a UNE graduate. I don't know, right? I'd like to think that we had done that. But since then, talking with administrators, I've got a 13-year-old grandson that, if you remember 2 years ago, there was some news that folks put out about the Skittles, the fentanyl that looked like Skittles. And we asked our grandson, is anyone talking to you about this in school? And the answer was no. And so I don't know about looking backwards. I think what we can try to do is look forward and how we can make things better for our children and those that we love. And part of this education piece in school is not just the children, but you know what? I was talking before the press conference with some folks, and it's like, if that child feels comfortable, or a young adult, right, because we're talking about high school, comes in and feels comfortable talking to somebody about their sibling that they're seeing, or their parents that they're seeing, we can impact that through that community thing. So I'm more focused on looking forward.
Any questions on this before we open it up?
There's a bill right now, LD 1975, to decriminalize personal possession of drugs and invest in treatment. I'm just wondering how the caucus is feeling about that proposal.
I haven't seen that bill. I'm not super familiar with it. I've seen proposals like that in the past of decriminalization of everything. I not to speak on behalf of both caucuses here, but I think there's been a general unwillingness to go that far. I think that's kind of the other end of the spectrum here. There's a middle ground that involves certainly holding people accountable and definitely those that are engaging in dealing. I think if you talk to law enforcement too, there's a problem with differentiating between that if you decriminalize everything. So it's about finding the right balance here. That's what we're interested in, and certainly those legs of the stool that we can most affect, which are, to Senator Farron's point, education, prevention, and to Senator Moore's point, treatment as well.
Speak a little bit briefly on that. I think what you've the image you've seen in the past is that Republicans are the party that's only about enforcement, drug enforcement. But I think from this point forward, what you're going to see from the Republican Party is a more holistic approach that takes recovery seriously. And you're seeing that evidence of that today, that it's got, you know, it's a bigger subject. And I think the Republicans are going to become the party that's the allies of the recovery community.
All right, we're short on time, but we can take one or two questions about unrelated things. Randy always has one. Fire away, Randy.
I'll start out with Representative Falkingham. I just watched the mass shooting training that happened up in the chambers. I understand this is a new approach to this. They haven't done this in several years. I noticed there were a lot of empty seats on your side. Can you talk about your reaction to this training being offered to your caucus not showing up? And I don't know if Trey or you just have any thoughts on the value of this training after Lewiston in general.
Well, in all fairness, there were a lot of empty seats before the training, so
Oh, were there?
and there were a lot of empty seats on both sides. It was an optional training. You know, I think that a lot of people on our side feel secure. They have a lot of confidence in our Capitol law enforcement, and they feel safe in this building. I know I can speak for myself. I've always felt safe in this building, and so we don't have a fear. You know, I'm just speaking for myself, but I feel pretty confident that law enforcement has us protected, and this is a good, safe building, and people should feel safe here.
I'll share this too, Randy. I think from our side of the aisle too, a lot of folks come from professions where this is a regular thing. I know in the military every year, in fact, I just did it this past drill weekend, the same exact training, run, hide, fight. It's not new, it's not a novel thing. So I know a lot of folks, and I went to today's training as well, and I saw about an even split. I mean, there's more Democrats here, so obviously it looks like there's more Democrats, but there are some lined up in the back too. I don't want you to get the impression that we don't care. I think there's certainly a lot of retired law enforcement, retired military, retired EMS. All of these folks would be included in some sort of annual training requirement that necessarily these days, unfortunately, involves active shooter training, and it gets kind of drilled in in all these settings, you know, what the standard is. But so anyway, take that into consideration as well. One more question, and then we got a jet.
I guess we're good.
Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great day.